America's most fascinating wonders. Some villages should not exist. It is a place where nature can make you feel impossibly small. Canyons drop like open wounds in the earth. Ancient forests rise like living cathedrals. Lakes stretch so wide they feel like oceans. Waterfalls roar between borders. Glaciers move through silence. And lonely highways cut through landscapes that shaped generations. Yet entire generations refuse to leave. They carry history, danger, wonder, and the restless spirit of a country built on movement. Today, we are exploring the most fascinating wonders of America. Places so powerful, so unforgettable, that everyone should see them at least once in a lifetime. Toraja, that makes Iceland look as if it is raising a stone spear from the coast, solitary, sharp, and almost perfect in every curve. This mountain is about 500 feet high, located on the Snæfellsnes Peninsula near the town of Grundarfjörður, and stands out amid the cold waters of western Iceland. Its special shape comes from ancient layers of rock worn down by glaciers, wind, and time, leaving behind a lone mountain mass like a natural tower. When low clouds drift by, dark rock layers appear on the mountain's side. Green meadows wrap around the foot of the mountain, and cold water flows through the silver-gray landscape. Standing before Kirkjufell, people are not overwhelmed by its height, but by the feeling that even a small mountain can rule the whole horizon. Leaving this place, what stays behind is not the size of the mountain, but the way its stillness makes people look back one more time before walking away. Monarch Butterfly Groves, California, turns into a shelter for thousands of monarch butterflies, covering tree branches like a sleeping orange and black cloud in the forest. These butterflies belong to the monarch population west of the Rockies, traveling hundreds to about 1,000 miles to reach warmer groves along the California coast, where ocean mist and tree cover help them survive the cold season. What is strange is that this journey does not belong to just one individual, because many generations of monarchs take turns flying, reproducing, and dying. Yet, the species still finds its way back to familiar wintering sites, like a secret map hidden in instinct. When the temperature is still low, they close their wings and cling silently to the branches, looking like dry leaves. But when the sun comes up, countless orange wings open at the same time and turn the quiet forest into a gently trembling, living cloud. That beauty is even more remarkable because the western monarch population has sharply declined due to habitat loss, pesticides, and climate change, making each cluster of butterflies on a tree not only a beautiful sight, but also a fragile sign of life. Monarch migration leaves behind the image of tiny butterfly wings still overcoming the cold wind, like a delicate miracle of North American nature. Niagara Falls, USA, Canada. With the moment when millions of gallons of water pour over the rock edge, turning the river into a roaring white wall between the United States and Canada. At Horseshoe Falls, the water curves into a horseshoe shape about 2,200 feet wide, then plunges from a height of about 188 feet and turns the base of the falls into a sea of white mist that keeps rising. The Niagara River carries water from Lake Erie to Lake Ontario, and this powerful drop is what has turned an ordinary river into one of the most famous natural sights in North America. From the tour boats at the foot of the falls, viewers see the wall of water rising right in front of them, while spray covers the deck and makes people feel small beneath the weight of the current. On the side of American Falls and Bridal Veil Falls, water pours over the rock edge in continuous white bands, then crashes onto the large rocks below, like an endless collision between water and stone. Niagara Falls leaves behind the image of mist rising high above the river, where the border between two countries almost disappears in the roar of the water. Angkor Archaeological Park. With blazing red Navajo sandstone cliffs thousands of feet high, the remains of ancient sand dunes that turned to stone about 180 million years ago. At the bottom of the canyon, the Virgin River looks small, but this very water has cut deep through the sandstone for millions of years, creating rock walls from 2,000 to 3,000 feet high. In the Narrows, visitors have to wade through the cold river, where the two rock walls close in to just a few dozen feet and turn the whole canyon into a giant stone corridor. On Angel's Landing, the trail clings to a narrow rock ridge with chains and deep drops on both sides, making every step feel like walking along the edge of Zion Canyon. Beneath the hot, dry cliffs, hanging gardens grow from cracks where water seeps out, showing that even a thin trickle is enough to turn the red desert into a place where life clings to stone. When sunset falls over the Watchman, the red cliffs glow one last time before the Virgin River sinks into darkness at the bottom of the canyon. Oahu, Hawaii. With Waikiki set right beside high-rise buildings, while Diamond Head rises behind it like an ancient crater guarding Hawaii's busiest shoreline. Diamond Head is not only Honolulu's beautiful backdrop, but a tough cone formed about 300,000 years ago, when ash and volcanic material bonded together into a rocky bowl facing straight out to the Pacific Ocean. On the North Shore, the winter sea can rise into waves more than 30 feet high, turning peaceful beaches into a powerful stage for big wave surfing culture. At Pearl Harbor, the calm water hides beneath it a deep memory of war, where the attack on the 7th of December 1941 pulled the United States into World War II. Along the windward coast, green Pali cliffs stand steeply behind quiet beaches, showing that just a short distance from Honolulu, Oahu shifts from an urban rhythm to the wet wilderness of Hawaii's mountain slopes. Oahu stays in the mind as a very unusual scene. One island with big waves, a crater, a city bright with lights, and a harbor area that changed the course of American history. Son Doong Cave. Visitors with El Capitan, a granite wall more than 3,000 feet high, rising straight from the valley, where climbers look like tiny black dots on a giant face of rock. Half Dome rises nearly 5,000 feet above Yosemite Valley, with its rounded stone back and sheer cut face, as if an entire mountain mass had been split in two by time. Yosemite Falls drops from a height of 2,425 feet, turning snowmelt from the Sierra Nevada into a huge white column roaring between the cliffs in spring. On the valley floor, the Merced River winds through meadows and pine forests, while on both sides stand granite walls deeply carved by glaciers and flowing water over millions of years. In Mariposa Grove, ancient giant sequoias stand like cinnamon-colored pillars, making people clearly feel their smallness before a forest that has lived through thousands of winters. Maui, Hawaii. Because two large volcanic masses are joined by a low valley strip, creating the image of an island lifted from the sea by fire and clouds in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Maui is part of Hawaii, where high mountain terrain makes the climate change very quickly, from dry, sunny shores to damp forest slopes within just a few miles. Over millions of years, lava built the island's foundation, while tropical rain and sea winds kept carving the valleys deeper, opening up green cliffs and waterfalls pouring down from the mountain sides. Along the coast, roads wind through dense forest, volcanic rock beaches, and steep sea cliffs, creating one of Hawaii's most famous scenic drives. Offshore from Maui is Molokini, an ancient crescent-shaped volcanic crater rising from clear blue water, famous for its rich marine life and especially clear underwater visibility. In winter, humpback whales return to Maui's warm waters to give birth and raise their young. So the ocean surface sometimes bursts with tail slaps and bright white breaths. At the summit of Haleakala, the crater is wide enough to hold all of Manhattan, and when the last light of the day falls, Maui appears like an island made by fire, rain, and the ocean. El Chiflon, and most isolated places in the United States. A volcanic island in the Aleutians where the snow-covered Makushin Peak, the cold sea, and storm winds shape almost all of life. At the foot of green, grassy hills, Dutch Harbor is full of fishing boats, cranes, and metal docks, turning a remote island area into a huge gateway for the fishing industry on the Bering Sea. Mountain slopes without large forests stretch down to the sea, revealing the bare terrain of an island built by fire, ice, and storms from the North Pacific. In Dutch Harbor, traces of World War II make the scenery more than just mountains and sea. Because this very harbor area was attacked by a Japanese aircraft during the Aleutian Campaign in 1942. Lake Superior, USA, Canada. That standing before it feels like looking out at the ocean. The horizon disappears, the waves stretch on endlessly, and the huge cold water spreads so wide that it is hard to believe this is only a lake. With an area of about 31,700 square miles, Lake Superior is the largest freshwater lake in the world by surface area, wide enough for the wind to build large waves and create its own kind of weather over the lake. Along the ancient, rocky shores, the lake waves keep striking the sandstone cliffs, carving out caves, stone arches, and reddish-orange cuts that look like traces of time opened up right at the water's edge. When storms rise, the lake surface can change from calm to violent very quickly, and the hundreds of shipwrecks at the bottom of Lake Superior remind us that these beautiful waters have swallowed even large ships. Lake Superior leaves the feeling of a vast, wild body of water far beyond what people usually imagine when they think of a lake. Florida Keys, Florida. The highway seems to float on the sea, carrying visitors across thin coral islands between the turquoise waters of the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. On 7 Mile Bridge, the road runs straight across a vast stretch of water, making the car look small between the sky, the blue sea, and a horizon that seems almost endless. Beneath the shallow water, the Florida Reef forms a colorful living world where tropical fish, sea turtles, and coral turn the seafloor into the most beautiful part of the island chain. Along the edges of the islands, mangrove forests root themselves in salt water, both holding the land against the pull of waves and showing how fragile the Florida Keys are in the face of storms and rising sea levels. The Florida Keys leave the image of a very thin strip of land between two great bodies of water where tropical beauty survives thanks to bridges, coral, mangroves, and the delicate balance of the ocean. Ouray, Colorado. Locked in the embrace of the San Juan Mountains, where rooftops sit below tall cliffs, making the nickname Switzerland of America more than just advertising. At Box Canyon Falls, Canyon Creek is squeezed into an extremely narrow quartzite slot, then plunges down with a roaring sound, turning a mountain stream into a powerful sight right at the edge of town. In the cold air of the Colorado mountains, the Ouray Hot Springs Pool steams at the foot of the cliffs, creating a rare image where warm water and snowy mountains appear in the same scene. In winter, Uncompahgre Gorge is covered with huge man-made ice columns, where Ouray Ice Park draws ice climbers from everywhere to set their axes into steep, frozen walls. On the jeep roads around Ouray, off-road vehicles crawl over rockfall and tight curves, opening up the feeling that the Wild West is still alive on mountainsides higher than 13,000 feet. Mendenhall Glacier, Alaska. Like a giant blue river of ice, sliding down from the mountains of Alaska, where deep cracks and the sparkling ice surface show that a whole mass of ice is still quietly moving. This glacier stretches about 13 miles from the Juneau ice field, an ice area of about 1,500 square miles left from the last ice age on Mendenhall Lake. Blue icebergs drift quietly in front of the glacier, creating a beautiful scene, but also reminding us that the edge of the ice is constantly breaking off and retreating. Beside the cold ice surface, Nugget Falls pours down white over a forest-covered cliff, making the landscape feel more powerful because water, rock, forest, and ice all appear together in a very clear image of Alaska. Inside the ice caves, light passes through the glacier ceiling and creates a deep blue color like glass. But that beauty is also dangerous because the caves can collapse, crack, or change with the meltwater flowing below. Mendenhall Glacier leaves an unforgettable feeling. Before your eyes is a blue ice wonder, but beneath each flowing stream is a sign of an Alaska landscape that is changing year by year. Goblin Valley State Park, Utah. Like an army of stone, standing still in the Utah desert, with thousands of short sandstone formations shaped like mushrooms, with round heads and thin bodies, like ancient creatures turned to stone. These goblins are made of Entrada sandstone, a rock type that began about 170 million years ago, when this land was once near an ancient marine environment rather than the dry desert it is today. Over time, rare rain, strong winds, and the difference between hard rock layers and soft rock layers hollowed out the bases, leaving rocks with round caps that look as if they are rising from the ground. When walking through the Valley of Goblins, visitors do not view the landscape from far away, but step straight into a low stone maze where each rock has its own shape, like a face, an animal, or for a watchful statue. On the orange-red ground, the cliffs surrounding the valley create the feeling of a natural arena where light, shadows, and rock shapes keep changing the desert with every step. Goblin Valley stays in the memory as a strange feeling. People walk among rocks smaller than themselves, yet they are crossing a stage built by geology over millions of years. Death Valley National Park, California, where heat is no longer just weather, but becomes part of the landscape, covering the cracked dry valley, bare mountains, and white salt flats with the feeling of standing at the edge of life. At Badwater Basin, The ground lies 282 feet below sea level, making it the lowest point in North America, with a white salt flat spreading across nearly 200 square miles under the desert sun. The salt layer at Badwater is not snow, but minerals carried by rainwater down into the basin over many years, then evaporated by the heat until only cracked white patches remain on the ground. At Zabriskie Point, the yellow, brown, and gray Badlands rise in ripples like waves of stone, showing that rare floodwaters can still carve the dry desert into sharp wrinkles on the Mesquite Flat sand dunes. The wind pushes the sand into soft curves against the distant mountains, making visitors see quiet beauty while clearly feeling the harsh emptiness of Death Valley. On the cracked white salt surface of Badwater Basin, each small footstep makes Death Valley appear as a place where people only pass through, while the desert is what stays the longest. Shiprock, New Mexico. From the New Mexico desert, like a stone ship run aground, standing nearly 1,600 feet above the surrounding plain and visible from far away across Navajo land. From the base of Shiprock, thin walls of volcanic rock spread across the desert like fossilized wings, explaining why the Navajo call this place, meaning rock with wings. Shiprock is a sacred place to the Navajo people, so hiking, climbing, and driving close to the rock are all forbidden, making its beauty feel even stronger because people can only stand far away and look, not conquer it. Seen from a distance, the straight dark dikes cut across the yellow sand, creating the feeling that someone built giant walls to guide the viewer's eyes toward the main rock spire. Kauai, Hawaii. Of Hawaii, still rising from the Pacific Ocean, where rain, wind, and time have shaped green forests and majestic cliffs. It is the oldest island among Hawaii's main islands, and millions of years of rain, wind, and ocean waves have worn the land into deep valleys and sharp mountain ridges. Near the center of the island, Mount Waialael is one of the wettest places on Earth, with about 37.5 feet of rain each year, feeding rainforests, rivers, streams, and dense waterfalls along the Na Pali coast. Steep green cliffs drop straight down to the deep blue sea, creating one of Hawaii's most dramatic shorelines. Because many areas of Kauai can only be reached by sea or from the air, exploring this island always feels like stepping into a part of Hawaii that is still wild and hard to reach. As clouds drift across the mountain peaks and darkness falls over the sea cliffs, Kauai leaves the image of an old island that is still alive, deep green and mysterious. Yellowstone National Park, Wyoming. Where the ground still breathes with steam rising from hot pools, boiling mud, and geysers as clear signs of a giant volcanic system still active beneath Wyoming. Old Faithful shoots a column of hot water into the sky on a fairly regular cycle, turning underground pressure into one of the most recognizable natural shows in America. Grand Prismatic Spring opens like a giant eye in the earth, with a bright blue center surrounded by rings of orange, yellow, and brown, created by heat-loving microorganisms living along the edge of the hot pool. At Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone River cuts deep into volcanic rock and then drops over lower falls more than 300 feet high, creating a great crack filled with yellow, white, and red in the heart of the plateau. Across Lamar Valley, herds of bison move through the grasslands and the early morning mist, reminding visitors that Yellowstone is not only a geothermal park, but also a wilderness that still keeps the rhythm of ancient life.